Please let me know if y'all can hear me. Can y'all hear me? I'm still trying to get the sound to work. Let me know if you can hear me. Okay, all good. Everybody can hear me now? Okay, good deal. I don't know what the deal was the first time. But anyway, this is what we're going to tie. It's a little redfish crab. Call it the Easy-Keeled crab because I use a bead keel on it. And the Easy crab shells from sight cast fly fishing. So it's pretty easy little fly to tie. Okay, good deal. I'm glad y'all can hear me. The buzz in the background is probably the TV my daughter's watching. So anyway, let a few people join and now we'll get started. Look at the fly. How about it, Brian? Good deal. I was having a little technical difficulties there. Nobody could hear me the first time I got on. So anyway, we'll get started tying these little dudes. I'm using the shank jaw and the standard hub, the standard offset hub. Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it. Okay, so I'm using the shank jaw in the standard offset hub, not the center spin hub, because I'm using this jaw for a couple of reasons on this fly. I want a little bit of access into the bend of the hook, and this pointed jaw allows that better than the standard jaw. So this is a size 2 Ahrex SA 220. Just a little bit. Yeah, I know y'all caught some fish on it, Tim. That was kind of the test of this little pattern. I hadn't got to fish these yet, so I'm glad y'all caught some fish on them. So what I'm going to do is start a thread base, and I'm using orange UTC 210. I'm going to come back to right behind the eye, give myself a little bit of room, because we'll use that when we're tying our Weedguard in at the end. First thing I'm going to tie on this fly is a large bead chain eye. In olive. I'm going to tie that right on top of the shank. Remember, I'm leaving myself a little room up here because I'm going to need that later on. Make sure those are good and secure and fairly straight. Then I'm going to come in with some thin super glue on the bottom. and the top to lock those eyes down. Doing some winter midge patterns, isn't it? No. I mean, y'all guys that tie the small stuff, I don't know how y'all do it. It's not something I can do. I just can't do it. But anyway, so we've got our eyes on. Then I'm going to reposition my hook in the jaws just a little bit, so I give myself some room here. And I'm going to come in with some Raid Zap fluorescent orange flex resin. And I'm going to create a little ball of UV resin right where my thread base stopped, right as the hook starts to bend. Just a little round ball of UV resin. And this is going to act as the hot spot on the fly or an egg sac on a crustacean, whatever you'd like to call it. But this is kind of my starting point for most of my crustacean flies. I hit it with my light and rotate it as I'm hitting it with my light so it cures good all the way around. No tack, so we're good. Alright, back up. Okay, next step, I'm going to work my thread back to that ball of resin. And I'm going to take, for this first one, I'm going to take some cream colored Arctic Fox tail. And it doesn't take, you don't have to pull a big clump of this, just a small little amount. This is going to be the tail or the claw of this fly, whatever you want to call it. It is a crab, so they technically don't have tails. And then I'm going to measure that about a shank length and a half long. That's all I want. Doesn't have to be a big long tail that's going to foul on you. And I'll tie that in right up against that ball of resin, right on top of the shank. You want to keep it on top of the shank, not really let it roll, because we're going to come in and veil over that ball of resin here in a minute with another material. So I'll trim that away, those butt ends, and cover them up with thread. Okay. Next step, I'm going to take a piece of 20-pound fluorocarbon. This is Rio Fluoro Flex. It's just what I have laying around. And I'm going to tie it right on top of the shank. Don't want it to roll around. Keep that right on top of that shank. Tie that down all the way back to where we tied our fox in. And then I'll take that piece of 20-pound fluorocarbon and pull it forward so it kind of kinks it a little bit and it stands up out of the way for now. And then you can come in with a marker and bar this tail a little bit. So I'm going to use a green, olive green, to match the eyes. Okay. So now we've got our tail and our piece of fluoro tied in for our keel. The reason I'm using fluorocarbon is because fluorocarbon sinks, monofilament floats. So monofilament would kind of be fighting the whole purpose of this little part of the fly. So that's why I do that. It's not because fish are going to see it, it's because of buoyancy difference. So the next thing I'm going to do is make a dubbing loop. And I'll tie it back right to where we tied that tail in. So I've got a loop here. And I will take my dubbing loop hook. It's just a cheap hairline one. And I'm going to use some Spawn Simi seal in sand dab. It's kind of a dark brown color. It's got some little bit of copper flash in it. And I'm going to pull a pretty good sized little amount of that out of the pack. And then I'll pull it apart just to even the fibers up. They're kind of all mangled up in the pack. And once I've done that, I'll take some Senyo shaggy dub in tan, and I'll mix that just a small amount of that, just a very little bit, and I'll mix that with that dubbing. So that's going to give us a really buggy look. It's going to have lots of little rubber legs, like mouth parts on a crab, sticking out, or little legs, or whatever you want to call them. Then I'll take that, throw it in my dubbing loop, take my thread, bobbin thread, across the thread post, and I will distribute that dubbing in my loop. Playing redfish trip to Louisiana in March looks like a pattern to have it. It would hurt Louisiana fish for real. It seriously would. Redfish and black drum both would eat this. So I'm gonna spin that up. End up with a scruffy little brush looking dubbing loop here. I'll come in with a wire brush and pick it out a little bit. So now that's basically a brush just made with thread. So my next step is I'll start rolling that on the hook. And as I do, I'll pull those fibers back. Pull those fibers back so we're not trapping any. If you trap these little shaggy dubs, they're kind of hard to pick out because they stretch, so it's better to try your best not to catch them at this stage in the fly. One more round. Okay, so now we have our collar of our fly here, and you can come in with scissors or a bodkin, whatever, and pick it out a little bit, any trap fibers. There's the collar. Our next step, we'll tie this dubbing loop off. Trim that away. Just clean that little tag end of thread up. Make sure our dubbing loop's locked down real well. Clean our thread base up a little bit because this thread's going to be exposed on the bottom of the fly. So we want that to look nice and clean. Okay. Our next step, we're going to tie in some rubber legs. And I have two kind of a green pumpkin looking side cast marsh legs. They're green pumpkin with white bars. Hey, and if y'all have any questions and I miss them along the way, I'll try to go back and look over these comments and make sure I didn't miss anybody. So next thing we're going to do, take one rubber leg, wrap it around our thread, even the tips up. I'm going to tie it in on the side of the shank of the hook, right up against that dubbing loop collar. So we'll have two rubber legs sticking out that side. I'm going to flip the fly over, and I'm going to repeat that step. Even those tips up, and go right in close to that collar. Tie those in on the side of the shank. So now these are long. They're going to foul if we don't do something about them. So I'm going to come in with some old scissors. Trim those just a little bit. I trimmed about a little over a ½ inch off of them. Okay, so now we've got tail, collar, rubber legs. Next step, for this one I'm going to use orange. Some Easy shrimp eyes. These are basically crustacean eyes that are already attached together. And I really, really like these little guys because I hate making crustacean eyes, and these are like the best thing since sliced bread for me. So I'll tie those in right on top of, or right, the fly's gonna ride this way, so I'm gonna call this part the top of the fly. I'm gonna tie these right in on top. So you just tie that little tab in, and that's all there is to these. You don't have to worry about evening your eyes up. Kind of come in and pull them apart a little bit, but there's some eyes, so, and they're even. You don't have to struggle with them, and you don't have to spend hours making them. So, hey, old Tim, thanks. I sure appreciate it. I'm glad you're tuned in and watching me. Okay, so now that we've got those, I'm going to come back in with my thin super glue and just put a little bead of it. This stuff soaks in to the thread really well. Put a little bead of it down the top to hold those eyes on top of the fly. Okay, so we're getting pretty close to the end of this little guy. The next thing I'm going to use is, or the next thing I'm going to tie on is the body. I like them too also, all the side cast stuff. Yeah, they make good stuff. Tim, these little things are awesome. They are not cheap, but they are awesome. They're out, the company's out of Denmark. It's called Easy Shrimp Eyes. There's a couple of people that have them here in the U.S., but I will never make crustacean eyes again. So the body on this fly is going to be a sight cast fishing easy crab shell, and these are really, really easy to use. They're pre-cut little crab shells. and they have a little tab that you tie them in by. So what I'm going to do with this is lay that right there on top of where I tied the eyes in, and just work my way down that tab, tying that down. Work my way back. Okay, so that's tied on. We'll come in, put another little drop of super glue just to lock that down. Because these are like felt. They'll soak up some glue. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is flip my fly back over. Come back over across the thread post, and I'm going to reposition my fly in the jaws just a little bit again, so that the pointed part of these jaws protrudes over where this body's going to fold back to. And I'm going to show you why in just a second. Flip my fly back over. Take some E6000 and a toothpick and my pitiful little glue palette here. I'm just going to put a small amount of glue on my palette and cap that back off. And this is what I glue eyes on baitfish flies with. I use this glue a lot because it's flexible and water doesn't really affect it like it does super glue. Water breaks down super glue, so over time it's gonna fail you. I'll take a toothpick and pick up a little gob of glue, lay this to the side, and I'll come right down the center of that easy crab shell with that glue, and it'll just lay right on there. It's easy. There's a little fiber trap there, but don't know where that dude came from. So we've got a line of glue. I don't know if y'all can see that line of glue down the center of the crab body. What we're going to do now is fold that crab body and tuck it under the nose of the jaws. See how it's tucked under there? And that's what's going to hold it to cure while we finish the fly. Press it down a little bit. I need to reposition just a little bit so it'll hold a little tighter. Okay. Now we've got a good tight hold on that body where it's wedged up under the jaws of the vise. So that's basically the fly if you don't want to tie a Weedguard on it. I'm going to tie a Weedguard on this one just because a lot of people want to throw these in grass. Where I fish for redfish, we don't have grass. It's just white sand. Some parts of the Florida Panhandle do have grass, but I've not had the luxury to fish those parts, so I don't typically tie Weedguards on mine. I know a lot of people do like Weedguards though, so we're going to go ahead with that. Okay, so back to our 20-pound fluorocarbon we tied in. We're going to take 2 of these larger, I can't remember what size these are. They're the hairline greedy beads, tungsten beads, and these are the larger size. You can use the smaller 3mm ones. I think these are about 4.5 millimeters. But you can use the smaller ones, you just have to use more of them. So I'm going to thread 2 of these tungsten beads on this piece of fluorocarbon. And that's what's going to flip this fly. And it's also going to rattle a little bit when you strip the fly. So to secure that, I'm going to take my fluorocarbon tag in, go through the eye of the hook, and tie that down. And you can adjust the size of the loop that your beads are going to ride on. The loop's actually a little big, so I can pull that down. And see, those beads are going to sit right there. Just like that. And that's going to flip that hook every time. So, now that we've tied that down on the bottom side, and it still ran through the eye of the hook, I'm going to come to the top side, tie it down once again so it's doubled over and tied down. And then I'm going to come in and trim it as short as I can, just to keep things neat. And then I will take some 20-pound Mason hard mono. Trim that away. And to tie Weedguard in, this stuff's really stiff, so to tie Weedguard in, I'll take this small length and double it over and pinch it with my fingers so it makes a V. You can definitely see that there's a little kink in it there. Let my fly back over. And I'll come in on the eye, right behind the eye, and double that over the hook. So you can see it's looped over the hook. And I'm going to leave it sticking up like this for now. And I'll make 1 wrap, 2 wrap, 3, 4, 5. They don't have to be tight right now. Just a few wraps to secure it. And then I'll pull this loop end back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in front. Okay, so that's tied in there now. It's pretty solid. I'll come and catch the eye of my hook. Going in 8 and 9 weights this fall, really not a hard fly to cast. It doesn't land hard on here. I've had a few people say that they land a little hard, Tim, but if you lead the fish enough, it's not going to give you a problem. So I'll catch the eye of this hook and the tag ends of this 20-pound Mason, pull it down. Then I will take my whip finish tool, throw a whip finish on there, cap my bobbin off, and then trim my thread away. Flip my fly over, and I'll manipulate that Weedguard how I would like it to sit. So, and then I'll come back and pull it across the point of the hook, and you want it to be just a small bit longer than the point. So I'll come in with these old scissors, trim that off. This should be a good length. And you can kind of bend it so it's got some memory to it. So you can kind of bend it where you want it. Then, to finish this fly, way of fly, keep the fly from helicoptering. Yes, it's not going to spin or flip because the weight's down here. This is no more weight than a pair of lead eyes. It's just how it's oriented as opposed to the point of the hook. So that's going to keep you running true, just like a lure or anything. How they're weighted is to keep them running true. So to finish this fly, that should be getting close to cured. That E6000 cures fairly quick. It's not a super slow curing glue. We'll come in with some hardest hull I don't like to do UV on the exposed thread because redfish chew UV off of thread with a quickness. And this stuff soaks in to the thread and hardens it and makes the fly a little bit more durable. So I'm just coating any exposed thread. And this stuff dries pretty quick after it soaks in a little bit. And then, once you've got your fly tied, you can do this beforehand or after you've tied the fly, either one. It really doesn't matter. You can come in with a marker on this crab shell and touch it up with some little dots or highlights or whatever you want to call them. The shells take marker pretty well, so come in and give them a little natural look. And it doesn't have to be super perfect. I mean, they're kind of random how I do them. So come in with some olive green. And then I'm going to come in on these tips of this shell, hit them with a little red. So there's the kind of touched up. Yeah, these are Copics. These are some I've had for like 5 years, and they're still going strong. So, but anyway, that's pretty much your finished fly. You can play with the amount of weight you add here. Just make sure that it's enough that it flips this hook. These heavy saltwater hooks are hard to flip, and I mean, you see people tie quan flies with bead chain eyes on a heavy hook. They're not going to flip. They're going to ride point down and snag stuff, and fish are going to look at them crazy and not eat them and all kind of stuff. So that's pretty much it. That little dude's ready to go. And see, since the jaws had this shell pinned down, it's stuck cured to the thread base, so it's there. It's not going anywhere. And the eyes are oriented so that they're right up against the edge of the shell. If you tie them in before you do the dubbing loop collar, they'll stick way out from the shell, and crab eyes don't stick way out from their shell. So I think it looks a little funny. But that's pretty much it. That give it a rattle sign. Yes, that tungsten clicks pretty good. I don't know if y'all can hear it or not, but it's not a loud rattle, it's kind of a subtle rattle, but it does make some noise. Hey, these are easy little flies, man. They're easy, effective little dudes. There's not much to them. I found myself tying a lot more of these than I have quan flies in the past couple of months or so, and I still tie these guys. And I tie them. I actually weight these the same way now. So that's got a little keel weight on the bottom of it there, and a little rattle. Just need some redfish in Montana. Heck yeah. There's a lot of stuff that'll eat this besides the redfish. Lots and lots of critters on saltwater flats will eat this. Maybe not in this bright a color scheme, but I know for a fact black drum will eat it. In smaller sizes, sheep's head will eat it. I wouldn't throw one this big at a sheepy. He's probably going to turn it down. They make a smaller size of these bodies. So that's the smaller one as compared to the large one. Not a whole lot smaller. They fit like a size 4 hook or a size 2. I tie them on a size 2 SA280 Ahrex baitfish hook, and they work well. Snook might eat it, yeah. If these will work. Surf fishing in Oregon. I don't know. I don't know what species y'all have in the surf in Oregon. So, something that eats crabs will probably eat this. It's not really a deep water fly. I mean, it's weighted pretty heavily, but it's to get it down in front of the fish's nose so he can see it. Because redfish, if you don't put it in front of their nose, a lot of times they're not going to eat it. And black drum, you have to force feed them, so that's a whole different story. What size hook is it? It's an Ahrex size 2 SA220. Their standard saltwater streamer hook. You can use what's the Gamakatsu? I can't remember the numbers on the Gamakatsu. These don't rust as easily as the Gamakatsus do. Whatever Coating, Morton, and those guys are putting on these hooks is crazy corrosion resistant. I've got some in my box that have been fished 4 or 5 times and they have no rust whatsoever. And they're sticky sharp. So, I mean, it's gonna stick fish. B10S, redfish break B10Ss. If you get one in the crushers, he's just gonna break it. They have pharyngeal jaws, like jaws in their throat, and they're built for crushing crustaceans. So I've had a lot of complaints and people I've tied flies for, do not tie these on the B10S because of that reason, because redfish will just break them. They're just not stout enough hooks. The larger sizes, yes, but like a size 2, it's a bass hook. It's not a redfish hook. But anyway, that's pretty much it. That was crushed by some dock lights. Yeah, you could weight it a little bit lighter so it kind of floated down, and it would probably keel under some dock lights. Put a little bit more flash in it. Mustad 34. I'm not familiar with the Mustad hook numbers. I've never used them, so. I think some places, like farther up the East Coast, stripers get up on the flats and they'll eat crab flies. I think that would be a cool fish to catch on one of these. If y'all are good, that's pretty much it. It's a standard striped bass hook. Was a standard striped bass hook. Okay, it might work. Try it and see. I mean, that's all I can tell you. Will do, Bobby. I appreciate it, man. It's fun. It's a lot more fun than regular fishing to me. some people think it's silly, but I mean, there's so much stuff you can catch on a fly rod that's fun to catch on a fly rod. Not just, doesn't have to be saltwater fish. It doesn't just have to be trout. Trout are great, but we don't have native trout in Alabama. We don't have wild trout in Alabama. We have trout that can hold over where they're stocked, but they cannot reproduce. So there's just a lot of stuff in my state that I can fish for that are a lot more fun than chasing 8-inch stock rainbows. They get dumped out of a truck once a month. So, but anyway, we have our native red-eye bass, and they're fun, and they kind of live in water like trout would, like brook trout would, little small high elevation streams, and they'll just crush a topwater bug. So they're fun little fish. They don't get big. Like a 12-inch fish is a really good sized red-eye. So, but anyway, that's about it. If y'all are good, if y'all have any more questions, just shoot them to me. All right, y'all have a good evening.